Hey everyone, today we're going to learn about 4 things the church can learn from Peloton. I'm Daryl Girardier, and this is the Church Communications Podcast. Hey everybody, today we're talking about 4 things that the church can learn from Peloton. Now you may be asking, Daryl, what is Peloton? And you know what? That's a completely fair question. Peloton is a company that does exercise classes delivered online. Now, the caveat is it's not just like anything you could get on, say, like your Amazon Prime Fire Stick thing that you could watch online or Netflix or whatever that is. This is actually something where you have to buy their equipment and their gear, turn around and use their classes. And their classes come in 2 forms. It's either you watch them online in terms of live, or you can watch them on demand. Now, what makes Peloton unique in my mind is the fact that it's just not watching classes and buying a piece of gear, which by the way is not cheap, but it's the fact that they've done a great job of building online community and building feedback mechanisms by which you, the user, know where you stand on your journey, if you will. Now, I actually own one of these bikes, and I will tell you, out of anything I've invested and owned in the last, 10 years, it's probably my favorite piece of equipment gear that I've ever bought. Now, I will tell you again, it's not cheap. I'm foregoing a lot of things to be able to afford this, but it is a wonderful tool. And with that tool, I have realized a lot of things that they do really well that I think the church can learn from. And honestly, this whole thing started off with the first thing that I think the church can learn from Peloton, and that is online community and how to form online community and keep online community going. I was on a ride, which is what they call the rides, if you will. I was on a ride, a 45-minute ride with an instructor. And while I was on that ride, there were other people live with me on the class. There were probably 60, 70 people in the virtual room, if you will, riding with me at the same time on the spin class on the bike. And as we were riding, our instructor started calling things out. Now, they normally call out how fast they want you to go, how heavy a resistance they want on the bike, but this was different. He was calling people out virtually on the screen, talking about what was going on in their lives. He was like, hey, there's Cindy. Did you guys know that Cindy just found out she just beat breast cancer? Or there's so-and-so, and guess what? They found out they're dealing with lupus. He started calling out things in their life that were going on in their personal lives to the audience and cheering them on about the success they had been in the quote unquote Peloton program, if you will, of going on class. And so right then and there, I realized I had this sense of like, oh my gosh, I feel like in like a church small group, because he had done this thing where he made these people who were miles and miles away. Some people are in California, some people are in New York. They're thousands of miles away from the instructors, but they felt like they were right there. So one of the things the Peloton does really well is they form community online. They do have a Facebook group that you can join. They've actually got multiple Facebook groups, but they have an official Facebook group, and they've got hashtags for people who ride. They've got all this sorts of little type of nice things that they've added that have made community real for people. That for a lot of people who are non-believers, this is their small group. This is what they do in terms of finding community. Is they get on a bike and they see the same people pop up on their screen. These people are riding with them. It's like, okay, I've joined my small group, and the trainer, if you will, is like the small group leader. So it's interesting to see the way they formed these groups, and it's also interesting to see the way the people have really gravitated towards this and making this their online community. So if somebody tells you that community can't exist online, I will tell you I've experienced online community through Peloton, and I will say it can exist if it's done really, really well, and they do that. Number 2, it's not about the organization, it's about people. One of the things I found about Peloton that's really interesting is it's never about the Peloton brand, okay? Like you like Nike or Reebok. Now, granted, there's clothes you can get with Peloton on them, but if you go to their Instagram account or you go to any of their social media channels, it's not ever really about Peloton. It's all about the people who use their stuff, the people like me, and their instructors. In fact, they really highly push their instructors in their social media channels. And what I find very interesting about that is you can tell that the instructors have bought into that because the instructors have become kind of the de facto brand, if you will. The instructors are the brand, not the Peloton itself. And so what that means is that I will follow all these instructors, and these instructors kind of basically display for you on social media how they live their life. In other words, what they eat, what they train with, all of those things that kind of, if you will, disciple me, if you will, in the sense of, okay, this is how, if I want to be healthier, these are the things I've got to do. So how does that relate to the church? Well, I think for a lot of us on our social media channels, we push our church and we push what's going on at our church, which on one level is understandable. But on another level, if you really think about it, we all know that people connect with people versus connecting with brands. And I really think the way the Peloton instructors do their social media is very much in the same roadmap that I think a lot of ministers need to treat their social media channels, which is an avenue and opportunity to model Christ's likeness in their everyday lives. Now, hear me say, I'm not saying that you got to be perfect. Okay. If you watch the Peloton instructors, they're not perfect. They talk about their ups and their downs, but it does give you an opportunity to mimic for people what Christ's likeness looks like as a minister and not to shy away from that. So that's one of the things I think Peloton does really well is it's not about the big brand. It's about individual instructors and following those instructors, which then I believe reinforces the brand overall without you having to push it down people's throats. Number 3, they give consistent feedback. Okay. Now, when you go on a ride, they've obviously got a screen. They tell you how fast you're going, what's your resistance, where you are in terms of the leaderboard. So you have that immediate feedback. But one of the other things they do that I think is really great is once a month, you get an email stating how many rides you took, how far you traveled, how many calories you burned. Basically, I get a readout for how I'm doing. If I'm falling behind or if I'm ahead of where I need to be, it gives me a real clear picture of where I stand. And I think in today's world where we have a lot of feedback loops and mechanisms by which we can measure ourselves, positive and negative, I think the church doesn't always do a great job of doing that, of letting people know, hey, this is where you are in your faith walk. Okay, let's help you get you to the next place where you need to be. But let's find some feedback loops, some feedback mechanisms by which you kind of know where you are and where you need to be. I think sometimes we shy away from that, understandably so, that we won't want to make it into a comparative thing where I'm here and you're there. But if we don't provide some ways for people to get feedback where they are, they're not going to have any idea if they're journeying closer to Christ's likeness, if they're becoming more like him without having some sort of markers. And that's one of the things that Peloton does really well. I know exactly where I stand. I know exactly where I need to be. I've got clear, consistent goals in front of me. And again, I'm not trying to take the Christian walk and break it down into goals and metrics and those type of things. But I do think it is good for the church to provide its congregation with an idea of where they need to be and where they're currently at. And Peloton does that really, really well. Number 4, this is the last thing. And this is the last thing I think out of all the things they do, I think they just do this the best. And that is they celebrate milestones. So one of the things that Peloton does is that if you complete 100 rides, which is kind of like the big milestone, you get a t-shirt. And it's a t-shirt you can only get if you complete 100 rides. Okay, so it's a simple black t-shirt with the Peloton logo on it. And when you get that t-shirt, after 100 rides, you can wear it. You can say, yeah, I'm in this, what they call the Century Club. Okay, so you do 100 rides, you get a t-shirt. And then what they also do is that every time you hit a 50th ride, so it's 150, 200, 250, increments of 50, that while you're riding live, your instructor will call you out and celebrate that. So I'll be in a ride and they'll literally go, hey, username so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. You guys all hit 250 rides today. Let's give it up for them. You hit 300. If you hit 1,000, the place will go nuts. They celebrate milestones. They make the journey a celebration, and they applaud those people who have gone on to hit certain points. Now, how does this apply to the church? Well, I think there's certain milestones in everybody's life that the church needs to celebrate. One of the things that my church we're currently exploring is, what are we calling it? We're calling them life points. What are the life points that we can help families celebrate? Is that dedicating your child, having a child get their first Bible, single person or anybody for that matter, buying a new home, forming it, actually physically having a house. What are those things? 50th wedding anniversary is another one that we're looking at celebrating. What are the milestones in people's lives you can celebrate to make them feel special and to let them know that you care about who they are and what's going on in their life? Again, this is one of the things that Peloton, I've seen firsthand people do, and they find unique ways to celebrate those milestones. I think that's a thing that the church can do. The church can learn to celebrate those little milestones in people's lives to make them realize that the church cares about them and that we believe that they matter. So to recap, here's the 4 things that I think Peloton does really well that I think the church can learn from. First, they do community really well. Community can be done online if it's done well. Peloton does that really well by making you feel like a group of people coming together, all for the same purpose, even though you're thousands of miles away. Number 2, it's not so much about the organization. It's about the people. Okay. In this case, it's about the instructors and me, the individual. In your church world, social media, all that branding, it should not be about the church itself, but about individual people, because we all know people connect with people better than they do with some sort of big organizational brand. And number 3, they let you know exactly where you stand. Okay. You've got feedback, if you will, back and forth about where you're currently going. And the church needs to do that. The church needs to provide people some sort of feedback to let them know where they are on their faith journey. And number 4 is they celebrate key milestones in people's lives. In Peloton, it's how many rides you ride. Every 50th ride, you celebrate. In the church world, we need to find ways to celebrate little tiny things in everybody's lives to help them know that the church matters and the church cares for them. So those are the 4 things that I think the church can learn from Peloton. Again, you may want to check out the bike. It's not cheap. I'm going to let you know that. But I liked it. I think it's been a great experience for me. So those are the things I think the church can learn from Peloton. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching us on YouTube. If you could do us a huge favor, if you could hit that subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you.